This is Aunt Shazy. I hate to admit it, as big of a history nerd as I am, I had never heard of Cass, West Virginia, until we drove through it last summer. We were traveling from point A to B with no cell signal and found ourselves in a town tucked into rugged folds of the Allegheny Mountains in Pocahontas County that seemed like a town that simply agreed to let time stand still. I soon realized that Cass is more than just a scenic stop. It is one of the most well-preserved examples of a 20th century company town in America. To understand Cass is to understand the raw power of the Industrial Revolution, the grit of the Appalachian logger, and the mechanical genius of the Shay Locomotive. I happen to be biased on the name Shay. The story of Cass begins at the turn of the 20th century. Before 1900, the high-altitude forests of the Greenbrier Valley were largely untouched. The red spruce and hardwoods were massive, but the terrain was too steep and the winters too brutal for traditional logging methods. In 1901, the West Virginia Pulp and Paper Company, now known as Westvaco, founded the town of Cass, naming it after Joseph K. Cass, the company's vice president. It wasn't just a collection of cabins, it was a sophisticated industrial hub. The company built a massive lumber mill, at one point the largest double bandsaw mill in the world, and a town to support it. Every house in Cass was built by the company. They were uniform, painted in a distinct company red or white, you can see the white ones here in this video, and featured modern amenities for the time, including electricity and running water. The town featured a massive general store, which still stands today and is a must visit. A hotel, a school, and a hospital. For workers, life was dictated by the mill whistle. Standard locomotives were useless in the mountains of West Virginia. They were designed for speed along flat ground and would slip and stall in the 10 to 14% grades required to reach the timber on back Allegheny Mountain. The solution was the awesome Shay Locomotive. Designed by Ephraim Shay, these engines were a marvel of mechanical engineering. Unlike traditional locomotives with massive driving wheels and horizontal pistons, the Shay used a vertical 3-cylinder engine mounted on the right side. This engine drove a longitudinal shaft that powered every wheel on the locomotive through a series of bevel gears. Honestly, it hurts my non-engineering brain to think about it, but I'm super impressed by it. From what I could find in my research, this all-wheel drive system allowed the Shay to do a couple things. 1. Navigate tight turns. The truck's wheel sets could pivot independently, allowing the train to snake around mountain bends that would derail a standard engine. 2. Generate massive torque. What the Shay lacked in speed, it rarely topped 12 miles per hour. It made up for in raw pulling power. It could lug thousands of tons of logs up grades that could make a car engine groan. And 3, it could handle rough track. The gear system was forgiving of the temporary uneven logging woods track laid down by the crews. By the height of the logging era, the Greenbrier, Cheat, and Elk Railroad, the line serving Cass, operated one of the largest fleets of Shays in existence. They even took delivery of the last Shay ever made, and it is still running today. It's known as Western Maryland No. 6, or Big 6. By the 1920s, Cass was a booming industrial center. The mill ran day and night, processing up to 250,000 board feet of lumber every day. The sound of the Shay whistle echoed through the valleys constantly. However, the industry was built on a finite resource. By the 1940s and 50s, the ancient stands of spruce and hemlock were nearly gone. The mill changed hands, eventually being bought by the Mauer Lumber Company, but the era of big timber was closing. In 1960, the mill finally went silent, and the scrap dealers began to circle. The legendary Shays were destined for the cutting torch, and the town of Cass faced certain death. But the town was saved by a group of dedicated rail fans and local businessmen who lobbied the West Virginia legislature to preserve the line as a tourist attraction. In 1963, the first passenger trains, which were converted logging flats, pushed up the mountains once again. Today, Cass is a state park that functions as a living history museum. The Shays are still there, meticulously maintained by a shop crew that uses the same techniques and sometimes even the same tools used a century ago. When you ride the train to Bald Knob, the third highest point in West Virginia, you aren't just seeing the scenery, you are feeling the vibration of a machine that built the American wilderness. So, if you ever find yourself anywhere near Pocahontas County, or if you're a train lover, Cass is a must visit, and come hungry and eat at the Shay restaurant.